1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yes, it's okay. Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. So the session is organized by Action contre la faim, Action Against Hunger. It's also organized with the French Water Partnership, and it's funded by Switzerland. You are in a very special session here. Why? First, because it's a humanitarian session. So we are just going to speak about the humanitarian context, but of course, in line with the development agenda. Secondly, because we are going to have an interaction between the panel and you. So you will have the opportunity to exchange with those amazing people who are sitting there. And thirdly, because we have very high-level people in the panel. So it's really an opportunity. You know that the WASH sector is moving on quickly, and it's a great opportunity for you to interact on the next UN conference, on all the processes that are moving on, like the humanitarian reset and the COP30. If I had to say some key words for the session, so the first word is humanitarian. The second one is about climate and conflict. We have the opportunity to have in the room someone who is coming from Lebanon and who is going to tell us about how do we run humanitarian projects under the bombs. The third word is climate. How is all that connected? Well, obviously, Lebanon is a good example where you have the two agendas, the climate and the conflict, at the same time in the same place. Then the logic of this session is we are representing the WASH roadmap, and the WASH roadmap is an initiative that has been enduring for 5 years, which is ending at the end of this year, and the objective is to reinforce, to boost the sector, the WASH sector in humanitarian settings. Okay, so we are going to update you a little where we are on that. So we are waiting for the introducer, who is Enko Vink, who is supposed to do the introduction, but while for the moment he's not there, I'm going to start. And then when Enk will come, we will pass him the floor and he will say some inspiration words. Is it okay for you? Fantastic. So let's go. So I'm going to stay here and present about so yes, this is me, okay? So I'm the senior WASH advisor in ACF. I just presented you the agenda of the session. As you see, we have an introduction from Enko Vink. We are going to have a conclusion with Tanja Miskova, who is working at the Ministry of Water in Slovenia. Yeah. Also, we'll have the pleasure to have Shaima Gargash, who is from the United Arab Emirates. And then also, possibly, Mohamed Diatta. And of course, those two persons are very connected to the UN 2026 conference. And then you see here we've got a Q&A that will be facilitated by Pedro Arrojo, that you all know. Okay? So if we start, so we'll come back to Enko Vink when he will appear. We are just going to start by presenting the call to action and what it is. So first, you are going to tell me another call to action. Okay? Why? And why in the humanitarian context? First, you know that through the humanitarian reset, there has been a flagging of 4 sectors that are absolutely essential for life saving, and WASH is part of them. Okay, so we need to highlight the importance of the WASH sector in humanitarian responses. Secondly, you nearly have 1,000 children who are dying daily because of waterborne diseases. Okay, so now we are not in the debates of it's too hot, it's too cold, the sea is rising. We are speaking about life and death issues. Thirdly, when you look at the needs in terms of humanitarian response, last year it was around 350 million people. Half of them are in need of WASH humanitarian response. So if you have 2 people who are in need of humanitarian response, 1 needs water and sanitation and hygiene. So it's half of them. That's very important. Another thing is, despite of this obvious data, we acknowledge that the WASH sector is underfunded, especially the humanitarian WASH sector. We are not asking for a lot. The budget of the humanitarian sector is around 4 billion every year. We never get that. So we have 4 billion, you are going to save lives, and we never get that. And finally, you know also that the year 2025 was very bad for development, with a strong cut on the ODA, and this had a direct impact on, obviously, the humanitarian funding. And this is translated by death. It's not translated by, oh, we don't have enough money. It's translated by death on the ground. Okay, so we are alerting on those issues. And of course, the climate crisis is a sort of spin-off of all those problems. It's really intricate, the climate is intricate with the humanitarian situation currently. So basically, we launched the Call to Action 2025 in New York. It was at the preparatory event, it was at the UN, of course, in the preparatory event to launch all the process for the UN 2026 conference. And this launching has been done by Slovenia, who is in the room, by the Swiss Confederation, the French Water Partnership, and Action Against Hunger. Okay? So the process that I'm presenting you is official and is connected, is linked with the key agendas. There are 5 key messages in this call. The first one is a reaffirmation of the humanitarian principles. So I don't know who from the audience is working in a humanitarian agency. Can you raise your hand? Okay, very good. So when we intervene in a humanitarian context, we need to apply principles, the first one being the principle of humanity. But you have other principles that you can read here. Just a remark about humanity principle. In many contexts today, we, as humanitarian people, don't have access. The example of Gaza is a good one, but it's not the only one. Okay? There are many contexts where we cannot intervene. This is a breakout of the humanity principle. Another point is there's been a cut of 72% of the development assistance with a strong impact on the humanitarian funding, and this is denying life for many people. Okay? It's estimated that with this type of cut, you put at risk 14 million people in the next 5 years. So this is really also connected to the principle of humanity. And then about neutrality, for example, last year we had 377 humanitarian workers that have been killed. Okay? And most of them were local staff, local people. So this is just to tell you that when we want to demonstrate the importance of the humanitarian work sector, we need first to reaffirm those principles. They are probably obvious for you, but they are not necessarily obvious for other member states. The second point is obviously the issue of the funding and the support. Basically, you see here the, how do you call that? The diagram, the cheese. Have a seat, I will invite you. Yeah. So when you look at that, the blue part is the part that is funded, which means 30%. The gray part is the part of the people who are going to die because there's no funding for them. Okay? So when we request a budget for humanitarian, we know that it's going to be cut by 70%. And this is totally unacceptable. Okay? So we highlight that. Just a remark, this impacts the projects on the ground, but it also impacts the coordination mechanisms. So less money for coordination means a big mess on the ground, a loser in terms of efficiency, and at the end of the day of impact. Another point which is pretty interesting with the discussions we have today and this week around climate is this incredible overlap between the countries where you have a conflict, which are on the left, and the countries where you have people displaced by natural disasters. It's nearly the same countries, the same people. Okay, so for us, it's extremely difficult to say, your problem is a natural disaster, or your problem is a conflict, because most of the time it's the same person. Okay, and so the two agendas are extremely connected. That's why we are very sensitive to the fact that things are moving on the climate COP. It's just because it's also connected to our agenda. Just a little remark here also, when you look at those figures, you can see that in the last 2 years, the displacement due to conflict were 10%, when the displacement due to natural disaster are 30%. So in the trends of humanitarian crisis, the climate crisis is more and more impacting. Finally, we are here in Stockholm, and we have great guests to discuss about the water governance. Why do we do that? Firstly, because a sector which is not governed is a sector that cannot deliver. And the water sector is a young sector. The first time that you had a real affirmation of this sector was when we set the Agenda 2030. It was with the SDGs. When we created the SDG 6, the sector started to appear. And it's still a very shy sector. Me, I've been in many COPs, for example, and the first time we really spoke about water was in Sharm el-Sheikh. It was on the COP27. So during 26 years, people were discussing about climate, connecting it to energy, but not to water. Now it seems absurd for all of us because climate is essentially an issue connected with water. Just to tell you that the water sector is young and that it needs to be pushed. Okay, so for us it's extremely important to know, first to acknowledge that the governance of the sector is better and better. We had the chance to have the special envoy, we have the chance to have the UN Water Conference for 2026 and 2028. The question is what happens after? What will happen after the Agenda 2030? We don't know. Another question we have is where is the humanitarian side into that? So we know that, for example, in the conference UN 2026, the interactive dialogue number 1 is going to, the Water for People dialogue, is integrating the humanitarian side, and we are very happy about that. But there is still a mystery, how is it going to be sustained in the time? We need to fight for that. Okay, and then just to conclude, the last message we have is about the international humanitarian law and the violation of it. And of course, here I don't want to enter in the detail because my colleague from ACF Lebanon is going to present us a case study where you have an obvious violation of the international humanitarian law, and then you will understand what are the concerns and the constraints we have in the field. Just one thing, Solène, do we want to have Henk now? So maybe, so we just have a little parenthèse. Henk, you're very welcome to come and say your introduction words. Please come here, and then we'll have the case study from Lebanon. Thanks a lot.
Maybe one little second while Henk is getting on stage. As you can see on your tables, there are some white sheets of paper with markers. We invite you to look at the sheet throughout the session and to note your organization and your name down if you're interested about the call to action, which John just presented now, and if you're planning on attending the Cairo Water Week happening in October. And yes, it's a way for us to get in touch and to collaborate on advocacy messages in the upcoming year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super sorry I was late. I was running from well, as you can imagine. Won't go into detail. It feels a little bit as it was pre-March 2023 with the high pressure. And I think perhaps the most important thing I want to do, knowing that Shaima and Mohammed are here, who are running the 2026 UN Water Conference together with us, but hey, it is definitely also to them, to see this also as a real opportunity for not an official, but a handover in the context of the 2023 Water Conference. And before my session, the session before was about failing forward and all the mistakes you make and learn from that. Shanur Hassan, Bangladesh water activist and researcher at Delta, has organized that now for the second year. And I was there and others were there. And I shared some failures from the preparatory process of the UN conference, the conference itself, and especially from the Dutch perspective, the way moving forward, where there's like nothing. So there is that's a part. I think the handover here is that this is not easy. And we know humanitarian and development worlds are separated worlds. And then we look across in the development space, climate, biodiversity, desertification, wetlands, all those things that are securing water security for all, they're silos. A wetlands Ramsar COP is not visited by UNFCCC, as if wetlands are not mechanisms to both mitigate and adapt to climate. And I think in the context of the humanitarian agenda, where the need does not need to be researched, but it's in our faces, where people die because we lack the commitment, the capacity, the understanding, and the actions to really do what actually should not be so hard, provide safe water, hygiene, and sanitation for the 2 to 4 billion people that currently lack that. That commitment in the context of the fragility that is only increasing with conflict, as Jean already explained, but also without conflict, with climate-induced geopolitical challenges and economic challenges that are compounding that risk, is only getting more fragile. So the pressure on where things are vulnerable is increasing faster and harder and more than where things are a bit robust. So in the context of the handover to this humanitarian watch agenda, and figuring out how human rights and how they are prevailing in the discussion, in the preparatory of the conference. I'm not sure, Pedro, we got a 3 or a 4 on a scale to 1 to 10. But, we did a lot, but we didn't do enough. And inclusivity, I said it this morning at the session, my mother said, is a verb, not a noun, let alone a tick the box. But it's not easy. And I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm just saying that if we have this commitment, it will take everything we have to make sure that secures into that not only that agenda, but the reality on the ground. Really not talking lightly about this and bringing a true understanding of the challenge, as well as, and I think this is where we really need to help one another, a better understanding on the opportunities and the possibilities. What can we do? What does work? Where can we trigger change? And what are the conditions and conditionalities for that is going to be key. And I'm mentioning the Global Commission on Economics and Water report laid out the complexity of water insecurity, which is about land degradation, way more than water provision. So the map of conflicts and water access, there needs to be another map on biodiversity decline and land degradation, because that is, we are changing the source of our freshwater at the scale where that need for freshwater is only increasing. And on top of this agenda, the fact that competition over freshwater is won by the haves and not the have-not, is only making this more complex. So transparency in these complex relationships and a true understanding to capacitate the possibility of a partnership that crosses humanitarian and development is going to be key to present opportunities where we can really deliver better. So I think that's. I'm sorry. I wish I was more optimistic. But I think this issue demands super realism and a candid approach, but also to tap into the leadership that we have with the UAE and Senegal, countries in North and South and East and West and small and large that are willing and able to take this on. NGOs, people on the ground, spotlighting that leadership, individual and informal, and ensuring that we capacitate them to help deliver, I think is going to be key. So we have to invest in these people to ensure that we can deliver on the things that we need to do. So, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Henk, for those words. So indeed, we need to capacitate the humanitarian work sector. We need also to consider the humanitarian side of the coin as part of the development. At the end of the day, it should not be separated. It should be included in the development agenda, and that's why it's so interesting to have Shaima and Mohamed here to discuss that. Thanks a lot. So now we are going to switch to our case study. I'm going back to Lebanon, and Roberto, please come here and present your case study. So you're the work coordinator for Lebanon for Action Against Hunger. You can switch here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jan. Thanks everybody for this opportunity to introduce a case study from Lebanon. Many keywords has been already touched here. The overlapping between the climate effects in a country like Lebanon, specifically on droughts, and the implication of and impacts of conflict escalation and targeting of water infrastructure. In these days, we are launching this report, which has been designed by Insecurity Inside, Action Against Hunger, and Oxfam. You can download, thanks to this QR code, the report specifically. It's under the funds of European Union. I will go through a bit of context first. Can you hear me? Yeah, maybe now it's better. We are in a moment in a situation of post-ceasefire, with many violations of the ceasefire that started in November 2024. Access challenges are posed, especially at the border areas. Still, at the moment of speaking, we have 80,000 individuals displaced in the country. 10 collective shelters are active, and this last displacement crisis is overlapping to existing refugees crisis, the Syrian influx starting 2012, and the recurrent waves of displacement from Syria. The recurrent epidemiological crisis, cholera outbreaks, and so far and so forth. Last but not least, the recent and unprecedented low rainfall rate in Lebanon. 50% of reduction in rainfalls has been experienced in the country, with subsequent high risk of droughts and consequences we will go through together. This is the map of the Drought Vulnerability Index developed by the WASH sector in Lebanon, with area more prone to drought and water scarcity. 1.85 million of people lives in areas highly vulnerable to droughts. More than 44% of the population depends on expensive and unsafe resources, such as unregulated sources and water tracking. This percentage is expected to increase. The water prices in the private market is expected to increase in the coming months due to the current drought situation and demand. We can overlap the previous drought vulnerability index with the conflict-affected areas. We will see how those aspects are entwined and correlated. In October 2023, Insecurity Inside the monitoring process revealed multiple attacks on public water infrastructure in Lebanon. And that's when Action Against Hunger, Oxfam, and Insecurity Inside together, we joined forces to collect further evidence and analysis on those attacks and the impacts of this conflict escalation to water infrastructures in Lebanon. We were relying on two main sources of data. Primary sources, key informant interviews, focus group discussion in South, Nabatia, Bekaa, and Baalbek Kermel governorates. And primary and the secondary sources, such as remote monitoring, remote sensing with the satellite image and feedback and desk review from the field. Many reported and recorded accidents has been tracked between October 2023 and November 2024. water infrastructure has been repeatedly attacked by the Israeli military forces, damaging and rendering inoperable for multiple months the water facilities and infrastructures. At the border area, we have experienced during the land occupation amounts of accident with bulldozer flattening entire villages and water facilities. A total number of 300 water facilities has been targeted in the country. Most frequently in the south, South Governorate and Nabatea. It is estimated up to 90% of the wash facilities has been damaged or destroyed in South Lebanon within the first 5 kilometers of the border. This is up to the South Lebanon Water Establishment testimony. You will find a lot of testimonies in the report. We have also the pleasure to have here Mrs. Paula from Becca Water Establishment, which contributed to this with their key informant data. Here, a snapshot on the south. We concentrate on in south. More than 20 facilities has been targeted. In the report, you will find the specific focus on the most notable ones. These are the ones that experience at least a moderate level of damages since October 2023. We have 3 levels of impact. Wash service, of course, remain unavailable for many months after the damage and the episode of destruction. As a result, we have dependency of water trucking, which is costly, up to 10 times more compared to the pipe water supply systems, as per the World Bank estimation. Food security is also challenged. Farmers, more than 80% of the farmers interviewed experience difficulties in accessing water when it comes to irrigation and when it comes to livestock production. Overall, we interviewed more than 80 people at multiple levels, the water utility level, managers, water actors, farmers, and communities for this report. The second level of impact is the long-term reverberating effects, right? So we have a long-term disruption of running water facilities. Pumping stations, in some cases, are fully destroyed. Extensive damages are also reported at network level when it comes to the tertiary level, villages and household connections. Degradation of water resources and public health is a very important point to mention. Public health is at risk due to many contamination and unsafe water provision as a coping mechanism in the areas. This is exacerbated further due to the dry season currently occurring in the country. Third level of impact, the main barrier to recovery. The conflict has posed ulterior barriers to the recovery. Lebanon has experienced in the last 10 years, especially challenges when it comes to cost recovery and sustainability. So non-revenue water, financial losses, and physical losses are present to a big extent in the country. We can estimate, due to the conflict, $171 million as a total losses for water, wastewater, and irrigation sector combined. The humanitarian response plan is estimating 100 million as the most urgent infrastructural works to reestablish services. Only 15% of those funds are secured. Last slides about recommendation to humanitarian programmers and donors. Of course, continuing the support for the rehabilitation, operationalization of conflict-affected infrastructure. In the meantime, not leaving anyone behind with temporary access to wash services, water tracking, emergency water points. Last but not least, regular monitoring is essential. Surveillance is essential. Clinical surveillance, genomics surveillance, and water quality testing is essential to anticipate and go in favor of early warning and, I would say, real-time data acquisition. Remote digital management is also a key aspect here. We experience many deaths and losses from operators during the escalation period. Remote management minimizes the physical access of operators in the facilities, and so can contribute on one hand to maximize the impacts and the direct fluxes. On the other hand, can save actually life of people operating in the area. Thanks a lot. I think question and answer will be given later. I will introduce Robert Gensch now for your initiative. Thanks a lot. Your initiative on the wash up. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you very much. Good afternoon. I would start with presenting one of the WASH RoadMap initiatives. The first of them, which is it working? It is. Which is the WASH Hub, a humanitarian WASH knowledge management tool, and also how it links to climate mainstreaming. This hub is meant to become the global sector go-to point for humanitarian practitioners to be the one-stop shop in a way for all the knowledge that will be compiled, curated on one single platform. To provide orientation to humanitarian practitioners in the field, and it also is meant to become the virtual home of all the current sector initiatives, current WASH RoadMap initiatives, but also existing technical working groups of the Global WASH Cluster and various others, and also this community element of creating communities of practice on demand whenever it's needed. Right now, we are still in the final conceptualization phase, finalizing the hub architecture and also the governance structure, and hope that we do have a first clickable prototype, and we do hope that by early next year we have a first beta version of the hub up and running. It's truly a joint sector initiative with all those agencies that you can see here on the screen involved in developing it. And as you can see here too, there's still a few white tiles where still a few more logos would fit in. So in case you don't see a logo here, then approach us. So at its core, what we're trying to do here is compile all the available tools, all the key resources, link to existing platforms, events, trainings, whatever the sector has, also link to existing sector networks, link to provide that virtual home for various sector working groups, as well as WASH RoadMap initiatives, and also, to the extent possible, also link to the individual databases of various humanitarian WASH agencies. And then, at the one hand, access all this wealth of information through an AI-powered chatbot that allows then for multilingual, contextualized AI response, and then at the same time, in order not to just have this AI black box in a way, also have a more conventional browser-based access to more structured access to all the resources within that hub. And as I said, we also try to build an entire community and a network around it, with becoming that virtual home for all the existing sector initiatives, and also for more complex requests that there's also a team of experts behind that provides this help desk function. So that's in a nutshell what we're planning to do, and we're quite advanced in the process. To link that to the theme of this session, strengthening the climate resilience in WASH, There is already an active climate change working group of the Global WASH Cluster, and we are planning to provide that virtual home for this working group. They are currently developing this climate action framework and compiling the ever-growing resource base on climate and WASH, together with all the trainings and webinars, etc. This will all be included within that platform. And I guess that's about it. Stay tuned and eventually join the hub at some point. Thank you very much. And handing over to Marielle to present the next of the WASH RoadMap initiatives. It's this one.
Yeah, hello there. So I'm presenting, so I'm with Save the Children currently, and I'm presenting a piece and a publication in the making on guidelines around integrated WASH and health and nutrition, focusing also on climate resilience through coordination action. So there are a couple of points I wanted to quickly mention to you. With regards to the outputs that have taken place over the last half year. We had a consultant working with us. 4 SOPs that have been developed around coordination levels, focusing on national and community SOPs around health and nutrition, so really focusing on that integrated WASH element. A practical toolkit for ready-to-use templates, accessible or assessment tools and checklists, and a 90-day implementation framework, moving from emergency response to climate resilient systems. I'd like to emphasize here that we call them standard operational procedures, but the nuances of that could really more be stated as guidelines. So just I thought a picture said 1,000 words. It's already nearly 4:45, so I'm hoping just quickly to go through this. This picture should show you that the guidelines that we have help to focus on national as well as community health and nutrition aspects. A compendium, as I said, has been put together. This is somewhat of a complicated picture, but nonetheless, I thought this would be useful to show, emphasizing the integrated WASH response around the community contingency plan context, focusing on the stakeholders, focusing on emergency actions, focusing on resilient actions, and focusing on monitoring. The actual publication itself was initially more than 200 pages. We've been able to bring it down to about 100. We're in the process right now, in line with the humanitarian resets, to reflect on it a bit more, to make sure that it's as relevant and as practical and as useful as possible. In terms of climate resilience, through multi-sectoral coordination, we focus on the sustainable WASH model, focusing on institutional, financial, environmental, technical, and social coordination, making sure that all of those aspects are included within the context of the work that we've done. In terms of the impact, undertaking this piece of work, as well as the work that we've done under the Initiative 6 so far, reducing climate vulnerability through coordination, adaptation, planning, and resource management, breaking down sectoral silos, and I really appreciate the point that Henk raised around that. We still very much seem to be around that sector, and this piece of work that we've done is helping further to link the humanitarian and development sector further, around climate response and integrated frameworks, focusing more on optimizing scarce resources in water-stretched environments through coordination, building sustainable climate adaptation and capacity, continuing beyond humanitarian transitions. In terms of the persons that we think would find this piece of work of interest when it is finally the final details are put together in the coming months. Climate coordinators, national adaptation planners, water resource managers, community resource leaders, and anyone here around the group, including the humanitarian and WASH advisors. I want to mention just a few points on upcoming pieces and publications. In terms of next steps, there's going to be a climate integration advocacy piece focusing on messages around WASH coordination and climate adaptation, water security and conflict prevention. There'll be a focus on engagement climate actors, so building buy-in among the climate adaptation professionals, water resource managers and disaster risk reduction coordinators, launching a climate resilience series. And this is part of a piece, and I'll mention that in a minute, around water adaptation, coordination, early warning systems, and the nexus approach around water scarcity beyond the humanitarian, but also the development sector, and then coordinating the climate lessons and analyzing, coordinating the climate-stressed context and the climate adaptation policy guidelines. So basically, in a nutshell, I wanted to just emphasize some of the outputs that have taken place since 2021, some of which have been done in evening hours as well. The very last one, which I think would be of interest to this group, so we have this compendium that is being produced. Most likely that this will also then be produced in the coming period. We have a publication that has come out for water scarcity in the Middle East, looking at climate change, a transitional approach. That's been put together by, we had our publishers Rutledge to put that together. We're hoping to do a second publication on that. That'll happen later next year. And anyone who's interested in the group, again, something that was echoed by Henk, there is a publication in 2021 on bridging the humanitarian development divide around WASH, which also focuses on climate resilience in alignment with Initiative 6. So I could give that also in the follow-up. Thank you very much.
My name is Johannes Rück. I'm the German WASH Network coordinator, and I have the pleasure to present you one last initiative. It's on the humanitarian development peace nexus. So when the WASH RoadMap was initiated, it was clear, and we saw the maps, the overlays from Jean. We heard the numbers that fragility and the increase of humanitarian needs in context of recurrent crises are kind of heavily accelerating, and that in response to that, it is needed to improve the collaboration between the humanitarian sector with the development sector, but also, where feasible and appropriate, with peace building. So I don't need to go into detail with the drivers for action. We heard about that. We have the climate change, water insecurity. We heard about conflict fragility, and we saw the overlays. If you look at the countries, it's often the same countries, and they experience also like huge financing gaps, especially these countries. And UNICEF did some math and came up with an interesting number. So they calculated that it needs 23 times more effort in a fragile country compared to a non-fragile to achieve the SDG on drinking water. So in response to that, the initiative decided to develop a joint operational framework, WASH resilience, conflict sensitivity, and peace building as its main output. The JOF provides guidance on this multi-stakeholder nexus collaboration, which is required, and how this builds on a common ground, on shared principles between the actors, because there's, of course, a lot which divides us, but there is also a lot of common ground. So the process was special in that sense. There was the first time that really a collective came together to align nexus thinking with, or the global frameworks, like the collective outcomes from the Interagency Standing Committee, with the sector frameworks, and
you see here with many organizations, over 45 contributing to that framework, and then also signing it with their logo, ranging from UN agencies to countries like Uganda, Switzerland, or donors like USAID, etc. That this multi-agency support was there. The word joint, of course, stands for the collaboration required. So the framework needs, or would love to, or aims to facilitate the collaboration. And the word operational, of course, hints at the practical steps which the JF also provides. So it's not only this high-level framework, it also goes into further detail and really into different steps where, I don't go through them, where practitioners and policymakers find different entry points in different parts of also their program cycle on how to engage with the other pillars, like a humanitarian with a development actor or a peace-building actor. So examples could be joint assessments, or that humanitarian actors engage in a common country analysis of the UN Sustainable Development Framework in a country, or other way around, that development actors engage in the process of the humanitarian response plans or needs overviews. So at the moment, we're really looking into how to get this framework operationalized. So we want to support its uptake at scale, hopefully. So I think it's evident that there are very good examples, and we also see them here in Stockholm, where there are successful cases, but at the same time we see still many barriers, like systemic structural barriers which we need to overcome, like breaking the silos. We talk about mandates, priorities, planning horizons, funding cycles, of course. But at the same time, I like to encourage you, because there is this common ground. There are many principles which we share: humanity, we heard, localization, gender equality, sustainability, localization, etc. That's, that unites us, and I would say there is more common ground than what divides us. So, and of course, do no harm, conflict sensitivity, and where possible also to do more good in fragile environments or conflict affected settings is also quite important. So for us, happy to receive your feedback, happy to present the JOF in more detail to your agency. We have still some financial means from the German Federal Foreign Office to support that. And finally, that's just also for you accessible. We produced a learning opportunity to support its uptake, its collaboration with the IRC WASH Systems Academy. A first introductory course, a course on conflict sensitivity and peace building will follow in due time. And yeah, now back to Jean for the Q&A.
Thanks a lot, Johannes. So you can stay here, and we are going to call. On the Q&A, we are going to call Pedro Arrojo, so the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights to Safe Water Drinking water and sanitation. Please, Pedro, come here to join us. Then we'll have online Maratinino from the Geneva Water Hub, and then Marielle, Roberto, Johannes. You're here, that's good. You're welcome to come with us and to take your seat. So now the room is open for questions, and after that we'll have a conclusion by the member states. So the room is yours. Do you have any question about this intrication between the humanitarian agenda, the development agenda, what we still need to get? I've got a question here. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations for the brilliant presentation. My name is Angel Assiam. I'm from Chad, working with the civil society, and I'm very. It's an honor to be here and to discuss about this very essential topic. I just saw on the first, in the presentation you made, Joe, the context of Chad. I just zoom, of course, on my eyes was just going to my country, where it's true to disconnect the climate mobility crisis with the conflict. So my impression is that globally the humanitarian answer is questioning whether and how we can cooperate with development. But I was just wondering how and where do you picture the ownership from local people on the process? Like, how do you integrate these local knowledges into as a hoster or as part of it? Because mostly we see the response of humanitarian as the consideration of local actors as the needers, but how about taking them and consider them as also the solution? So
I can have some elements of response, and of course, if you want to complement. Thanks a lot for your question. So Chad is a good example because you've got this massive issue of drought, but you've got also the refugees coming from the east border to the lake zone, etc. So you've got this superposition of the conflict impacts and the climate. To answer your question, I think that the humanitarian world has been perceived for many years as a support from the north to the south, and this is less and less true. If you take the example of Action Against Hunger, so we work in 59 countries, most of the people intervening as coordinator of projects are national people. So we try at our level to nationalize and also to localize. Every time we can work through a local partner, we do it. And I'm sure that Roberto could tell us about that, because when you work with public utilities, obviously you're going to work in a localization agenda. So it's just to reassure you that this is a very serious matter, and that there is, I think, me, I've been in the sector for 25 years, and I saw a real change on that. And I think the change is going to accelerate. But that means that you need to build the capacity of the local actors, and we do it. We do it by creating humanitarian masters. We have one in Burkina Faso, we have one in Jordan, by building the capacity of the people on the ground, of the local and national partners and local partners. And it's just to reassure you on that. I think the future is there. Maybe someone wants to complement?
Yeah, so if you look in the joint operational framework, where we try to align kind of humanitarian thinking with development thinking from the WASH sector, it's very clear that the three main approaches for these contexts where the humanitarian development peace nexus is relevant are to work risk-informed, because there are all these risks, and then to work in a conflict-sensitive way, of course, do no harm. But then the third one is to move towards system strengthening, local systems. And the example of transitioning a refugee camp from water trucking, for example, to a long-term professionalized, hopefully utility-based system, that is an example, from that area. And I think humanitarians too often have worked in kind of isolation, bypassing markets, bypassing local systems. Water trucking is the most famous example we often hear, unsustainable. Yeah, but if you're working in these environments, long-term protracted crisis especially, then it's important really to move as early as possible to such an approach. And that means, for example, for humanitarian actors to really do a good context analysis, do market assessments, look into the building blocks of the local system. So that's more the knowledge which usually development actors have developed, or which they have. So that already shows that we need to reach out to them. Groundwater, another one.
And just adding to that point of local systems and systems approaches, it's not something within the humanitarian sector that has been looked at in great detail. What we did do is we did a publication, it was also a practical action publication in 2023 on integrated WASH programming. So we had different authors writing different chapters. The point here being looking more at non-household settings. So what about temporary learning settings? What about temporary healthcare facilities? And linking them also with the development sector. So really looking at how these non-household settings, which have systems of their own, and how they can also help in this process.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please, Pedro, if you want to intervene.
Very, very short, yes. Yeah. There is something that I used to insist, that is, we usually we talk about a dialogue with stakeholders in general. And they used to insist on, have we problems in the UN at an international level? Have we problems for discussing with the most powerful sectors? Stakeholders? No, because they have money and they have the lobby here, they come. And what about right holders? What about grassroots people? We have no contact, we have not a dialogue, a real dialogue. So I think it's important to talk about dialogue with stakeholders with special attention to right holders.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. So, any other question from the room? Yes, please.
I have a question and a comment. My name is Edith, and I work as a consultant in the intersection of peace, development, and climate. And it's more like connecting the conversation from Chad to that of the upcoming water UN conference on water. One of the things that, we are speaking about these three subjects. Okay, we all understand that they are interconnected. And yet, when we look at the 6 themes of the UN Water Conference, let's say water as a pathway for peace is entirely missing. It's touching upon cooperation very well through transboundary cooperation, etc. Several of the key themes touch upon development very well, and even people from more the humanitarian aspect, but as a pathway for peace. So when these climate stresses are growing, water can really be either a connector or a divider, but ultimately it can be the one bringing the parties together around the table. And I think if the water conference next year misses out on that, that will be a missed opportunity. So, but of course, these are tough questions. And in this multilateral space, it's difficult to sort of tackle. But do you think there would still be a chance to keep this opened in the format?
Thank you very much. I think you've got the best people to answer you. They are the one organizing the conference. So, Mohamed, Shaima, what is your feeling about this question about where peace is going to stand in the UN 2026 conference?
Thank you for this question. I was in my laptop, but I can, when it's come to water for peace, I can give a response because, as you know, Senegal was very involved on water peace, security at the UN Security Council, and also for this conference also, when it's come for interactive dialogue for water for cooperation, behind the theme, we are privileging also peace mediation, but also how water can be a driver for peace, security, and development. And of course, we invite all people to come to Dakar also, or to partner with the next co-chair of interactive dialogues to give their insight and to give their contribution so that peace matters can appear on the program of the next water conference. But of course, we are very sensitive when it's come to talk about water peace and the role that water can serve as a driver to avoid insecurity in many areas. Thank you.
So I think the element of water and security or climate and security are extremely important. When the UAE was on a member in the Security Council, one of the topics that we were able to adopt as one of the main agenda items was climate, peace, and security. We are co-chairing this year with Austria the climate security mechanism. There is a big emphasis on the relationship between the water and security. The UAE is also part of the Rome process, and we're co-chairing with UNDP in Italy on energy and climate. But a lot of the initiatives have a strong water-related angle, where we look at not only the security, but also deterring climate migration because of water-related issues. The issue for us is extremely important, and as Diata mentioned, obviously the conference itself focuses on SDG 6. There has been the Interactive Dialogue 4 on cooperation has been the most contentious one, transboundary. But when we talk about peace and security within the water context, it doesn't only pertain to the cooperation angle, but it also looks into Interactive Dialogue 1, where we talk about people, human rights. We also look into the prosperity angle, but really talking about really touching on the peace angle, but indirectly in the other interactive dialogues, such as water and the different processes and investments in water. And when we talk about investments, you brought up capacity building, and I think that's kind of spot on when we really emphasize on the development, but the scale up of initiatives and the impact. So Interactive Dialogue 6 is the one where we investment in water, and doesn't only focuses on finance, it focuses on capacity building, technology, innovation. The sustainability angle is extremely important because in the end, really people want jobs, and you're going to create basically stability around water. Population is going to grow much larger than the actual reproduction of water, really, water resources. Water in itself is... there's no replacement for water, and so we really truly understand the importance from a security angle. Conflicts around water has increased more than 5-fold since COVID, for instance, on an annual basis. So again, this will be incorporated, but really looking at it more of a human-centric focus on the 2.2 billion people, emphasizing on the real livelihoods of people. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shama. I think it's a good answer, and it's reassuring for us. From my point of view, it's important to focus on these 2.2 billion people, but it's also important to focus on the 170 million where there is a risk of dying. And this is the humanitarian share. And this, we want to have that, and it will be probably on the dialogue number 1. Mohamed, I guess it's part of the water for people. But here what we are defending is that we don't forget those people, the people in Lebanon, the people in 38 countries, because here there is a real human risk about that. Thank you. Do we have another question from the floor? Yes, please. So one mic there, please.
Hi, yeah, I've got a mic. Hi, Will Tillett from Self-Help Africa. So, no, this is a great session. It's, I think it's clear that the rationale for breaking the silos and taking a nexus approach only gets stronger, and I guess what I'd really like to hear from the panel is, coming more from a development side, where do you see the hooks into development sector priorities to get more commitment and realization around the nexus from the development actors and the development funders? And so I think, Johannes, you mentioned around system strengthening. It's something I did some work, some research around looking at kind of adapting systems approaches to fragile contexts. I think what I found is there's a real lack of articulation and documented examples around taking systems approaches in fragile contexts. And maybe that's an issue of language between the two silos, or maybe it's just a need to better document it. But I think hooking things more into development sector priorities. So I think system strengthening is one. Another one in development sector priorities is evolving these financing and service delivery models for water services. And again, there was, at the time that I did that research, very little documented evidence around that. And I think the third one that's really coming up clearly today is around this climate resilience. And so I think it'd be great to hear more about where the hooks are, but particularly what the humanitarian sector feels it needs to do to better articulate and get those hooks to stick? Thanks.
Very much. So what we understand is that basically your question is about the fact that there is two silos. One silo about development with the UN conference, etc., and then one silo much smaller and not really heard, which is about the humanitarian response. The first thing is that we should break those silos because technically the humanitarian response depends on development. In a normal context, you've got a country who has the capacity to respond to its own disasters. And this is where we want to go. We want to build the capacities of countries to be able to absorb their own disasters. And that's why, for the moment, the humanitarian funding is considered as part of the overall development financing. But it's also in terms of strategies. A lot of countries have endorsed that. For example, Indonesia. When you are in Indonesia, there is a ministry in charge of disasters. Okay, so that's the link. If some people from the panel want to contribute to that, please, Pedro.
Two questions. For this question, I insist in something. For instance, when in 2023 it was focused mainly on elements related with development, more or less. So for me, the way of integrating is something that we are asking for from the Human Rights Council in Geneva, is to have and to assume a human rights-based approach. Is the way to integrate development, agriculture, environment, and so on. But so I don't insist because it's a concept well developed but ignored very often. And with respect to the other intervention before, I had a report on water as a tool for peace and cooperation, so I follow up this question. Just one thing more. Well, we have, with respect to water, the Water Convention is very important and very ignored also in transboundary basins. But my concern at present is much more acute. International legality is at risk. International institutions are, in this point, are at risk. When you hear from Lebanon and from Gaza, 90% of the infrastructure, water infrastructure, destroyed. This is not a collateral damage. This is not a war technique. This is much more grave. It's a cleansing, ethnic cleansing, no more people in the area. And this is not an accident. And we have the legality that say that it is not allowed, and we have the permission.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. We are going to have to close because we want to have a conclusion with the member states. Before closing this Q&A, I've got a question for Mara Tinino from the Geneva Water Hub. Mara, we had the presentation of this report about the violation of IHL in Lebanon. What is your feeling about that? What, as an observer and as an academic, what can you recommend on the base of the presentation of Roberto?
Thank you for the question, Jean. Thank you for including me in this interesting session. I think that unfortunately in this moment we see that in international law, the issue of accountability, including in the case of attacks against water and water-related infrastructure, our expectations are often frustrated, to say the best. If we go through an optimistic, let's say, point of view, I think that maybe we must be patient, and that these are also long proceedings. For example, now we have a proceeding on the crime of genocide brought by South Africa against Israel before the International Court of Justice. And there, maybe no, we will we will have an answer from the International Court of Justice about the violation or not of the Convention on Genocide. But for the time being, we see in the orders that were adopted by the International Court of Justice that, for example, the court is very clear in affirming the duty of Israel to allow the humanitarian passage and to deliver humanitarian aid to the civilians. Of course, there we can ask ourselves, but what is the implementation of 3 orders of the International Court of Justice repeating the same thing about ensuring the humanitarian access, including people bringing waters to the civilians. So I think that we must accept these lengthy procedures, and also the fact that hopefully also governments will change. So also what some governments do today, this can change in the future.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. So now we are going to proceed to the conclusion. So thank you for the panel. I think we can have a big applause to them. So I'm going just to switch, maybe if you can switch back to the presentation. Right, and then I'm going to invite Tanya Miskova, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs for Slovenia. Please, Tanya, come here. And straight after that, we will have the pleasure to have the co-hosts of the next UN Water Conference. So, Tanya, take the floor, and I've got a question for you. So, Slovenia has signed the humanitarian WASH call to action last year. Why did you do that? And what could be your recommendation for your member states' colleagues?
Thank you, John. And first of all, amazing discussion. I'm really grateful for all the amazing insights and important messages we've heard. Now to your question. Well, when you approached me and when I read when you presented the RoadMap WASH initiative, when I read the call to action, it completely resonated with our own priorities when it comes to water diplomacy and protection of civilians agenda. We have 3 priorities of our water diplomacy, and the first one is water and peace. But within that broad spectrum, we also include the protection of water infrastructure, water personnel, in armed conflicts. We are currently members of the UN Security Council, where we are tackling this issue within our protection of civilians agenda, and we're organized a very interesting debate in a RIA formula format a couple of months ago with some very important recommendations. So we have also, within our humanitarian and development assistance, supported WASH services in fragile and violent conflicts. You know, with the record number of armed conflicts going on around the world, there's never in history been so many armed conflicts with so many violations and attacks on water. Attacks on water has always happened in armed conflict, but the extent and the blatant direct attacks on water, this is unprecedented, and we felt we needed to take action. So before we joined the WASH RoadMap, we took action. Both these initiatives are part of the commitments we made to the Water Action Agenda in 2023 Water Conference. So the first, I'm talking about the Global Alliance for Sparing Water from Armed Conflicts, which we launched a year ago, together with Switzerland and Geneva Water Hub, which Mara represents. And it's not just another talk shop. we're actually trying to do, very concrete action. For example, this November we are organizing a capacity building for representatives of armed forces on certain principles of international law. So we saw the RoadMap initiative is actually complementary to what we're doing in the Alliance, because you're trying to move things on the ground, where we are on the ground, but with small development and humanitarian assistance projects. But you're an amazing community of actors that are engaging on all these initiatives that we've heard from, and I don't know if you have an additional question, or because I would like to reflect also on the what was said, just a few takeouts, if I can.
You've got 1 minute?
Yeah. So I just underline a few things. I was impressed by the AI tool, the hub. I think there's great potential in that, AI for the good. The guidelines, super important. And what Johannes said, risk-informed, climate-sensitive, contextualized systems approach, human rights-based approach, and in relation to Chad, I think Hank said, his mother said, inclusion is a verb. So I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Tanya. You can have a seat here. Now I'm going to invite to the table Shaima Gargash from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of United Arab Emirates. You're also a Sherpa, of course, for the UN 2026 conference. And Mohamed, you're welcome also to come and sit, because both of you are going to speak hand in hand and reassure the audience about where the humanitarian wash will stand on the next UN conference. So please take the floor. If you want, I don't know if you want to stand or to sit, that's the same. But you want to start?
Sure.
Please do.
So again, I echo everyone who stood here talking about how fascinating the discussion in the session has been around the combination and nexus of humanitarian and emphasis on water. It has been truly, I think, an insightful full day, Diata. It has been quite a very emotional day for us. I think the experience this year is a little bit different than last year, because this year we're really officially co-hosts. And I think the responsibility on us is really kind of taking a bit of a toll, and it's real. But again, since this is a closing session, I really wanted to, thank you all for being here. Thank you for the initiatives and this effort. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I really want to thank the French Water Partnership, SCC, and all the organizers for convening this timely session and bringing much attention to the humanitarian wash, a topic that deserves unwavering commitment. Because in the end, it is about saving lives, and it's about the 2.2 billion people. First and foremost, we need to ground this discussion in a few undeniable facts, right? Water and sanitation are basic human rights, recognized by all member states in the 2010 UN General Assembly resolution. There are not only entitlements, they're essential to life, health, dignity, and sustainable development. And yet there are still 2.2 billion people that still lack access to safe drinking water, 3.5 billion lack safe sanitation, and every year 1 million people, including 1,000 children, every day die due to unsafe water and sanitation. Women and girls collectively spend 200 million hours each day to fetch water, and the stats are really mind-boggling. Again, this is going to be a collective effort, working together towards achieving a more impactful outcome and solutions, working really together. So imagine how this picture worsens in humanitarian crisis and contexts where basic services just collapsed. Today, as we are reminded earlier in the session, that 173 million people urgently require humanitarian WASH assistance. And this is why we need to give this issue dedicated attention through advocacy, through funding, and through strong partnerships. And as Henk mentioned, we need to really invest in people. Again, we keep talking about it. In the climate context, there's the 1.5 as our North Star. In water, really, it's the people and the livelihoods of people. So for the UAE supporting the humanitarian water efforts, it remains really a central priority. And since 2015, the UAE Water Aid Foundation, Suqya, has provided access to clean water for approximately 50 million people across 37 countries, including the humanitarian settings. And today in Gaza, 6 UAE constructed water sanitations are producing 2 million gallons of water daily, serving 1 million Palestinians. The WASH angle is extremely important. We do want to emphasize, because it is kind of something that's been left behind. Priorities change all the time, but we really need to have more advocacy around the importance of bringing attention to what really matters. Building on this national commitment, and as co-hosts of the 2026 UN Water Conference with Senegal, we have been determined to integrate human rights across the entire process, both in preparations and in outcomes, and to ensure that WASH in humanitarian context receive focused attention. And as you know, much of our work in 2025 centered on defining the 6 themes of the interactive dialogue, which were adopted by consensus on the 9th of July last month in New York. And one of the key updates we put forward was the theme Water for People, the human rights to water and sanitation, including for those in vulnerable situations, for healthy societies and economies. And this was the first interactive dialogue. This dialogue aims to place human rights at the center of the conference to reinforce a people-centered approach and to ensure dedicated focus on vulnerable and marginalized communities. The emphasis on vulnerable situations, in addition to it being a key priority for the co-hosts, it responds directly to the inputs from the consultations that we've conducted over the past year or so, since 2024. And it included the organizational session that was held early this year in March, and received 495 survey inputs from various stakeholders, non-state actors. The humanitarian context clearly falls within the focus of vulnerable situations, but the framing also extends to other settings, such as migration, climate-related vulnerabilities, rural-urban divides, and the unique challenges faced by women and girls. These vulnerabilities often overlap, compounding one another and leaving certain groups most affected. And as co-host of the 26th Water Conference, we look forward to working closely with all partners to drive stronger action on humanitarian WASH. And many of the ideas shared here today will be carried forward to help shape a truly inclusive and impactful conference, one that advances on SDG 6, upholds human rights, and delivers concrete solutions for people everywhere. All stakeholders, governments, international organizations, NGOs, civil society, and the private sector have a role to play. And because progress on humanitarian WASH can only be achieved through collective action, this is the time and this is the opportunity to really work together. And we invite you to continue this discussion at the high-level preparatory meeting in Dakar in January 26, and to join us again in the UAE in December of 26, where we can demonstrate concrete progress on humanitarian WASH. Again, the road will not end at the December 26, it will continue. But we really want to show progress by then. And we count on your partnership and support to drive the impact we all aspire to achieve and reach the most in need. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shaima. That's very inspiring. Please have a seat. And now, Mohamed Diatta, so the Ministry of Hydraulic and Sanitation of Senegal. Mohamed, you are going to conclude.
Thank you.
And then just after you concluded, you're going to look behind you. You have this lovely girl. She's a WASH advisor for ACF.
Thank you.
And she's asking you something. She's asking Senegal and Emirates, do you want to commit like Slovenia did? And maybe you have an answer on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Shema make life easier for me. I would like to conclude quickly because she wrapped up very well our ideas. And as we conclude this important session on the humanitarian WASH roadmap, allow me, on behalf of Senegal, to share a message of conviction and call to action. Today, as climate change intensifies disasters and humanitarian crises, it is always the most vulnerable who bears the heaviest burden. Behind every drought, every flood, every destroyed water systems, every conflict, there are broken lives. These realities remind us of a simple but profound truth. There is an urgency to act in fragile and conflict areas, specifically in Africa and in every part of the world facing military or conflict. I think that today the human rights approach is very important to be applied everywhere in the world, specifically in these areas of Sahel in West Africa, where terrorism take place because of the impact of climate change, specifically in the lake basin, in the Chad Lake Basin, but also in a very vast region of Mali and Nigeria. Senegal has carried this message of the importance of water, peace, and security at the United Nations Security Council. And at this time, when we came with this title during the presidency of Senegal at the UN Security Council, everyone was laughing because in this stage, they are only talking about Gaza, about wars, and we came with this theme to say that how it's important to take care of this theme. And it also embedded in the Blue Deal of the 9th World Water Forum. I know that my dear friend who was one of the coordinators of this team, where the humanitarian aspects was approached. And we work also very closely with Switzerland on the high-level panel on water for peace to highlight this important role of water to curb also migration, but how water can be a driver of peace rather than a vector of war. And it's also embedded on the first pillar of the Blue Deal, calls for upholding international humanitarian laws. We know that we have Geneva's conventions on humanitarian, and these are very important, how to protect water and sanitation systems, even in times of conflict. I think it's very important. For water is not a weapon, water is a right, water is a dignity, water is life. These challenges call for concrete integrated response. First, ensuring water availability and resilience through sustainable integrated water management, bridging the rural-urban divide, because we know that today we have a lot of people who are in migration situation because of the hardest situation on rural areas, but also people who are leaving their areas because of climate change and wars. And lastly, mobilizing humanitarian and development facing in coordinating way to strengthen WASH systems for long term. This is why Senegal calls upon the champions of humanitarian WASH roadmaps. I know that Slovenia is part of this and Switzerland, to actively contribute to promote this idea to the discussions of the interactive dialogue 1, but also on the context of the discussion of the leading to the UN Water Conference in 26. The interactive dialogue number 1, as my colleague mentioned, Water for People, this dialogue will place at its core the human right to water and sanitation, equitable access to essential services and the protection of the most vulnerable people. The world does not need more alarming report today. We know what we have to do behind apocalyptic figures on humanitarian aspects, on migration. We must act so that water can be more a vector of peace, security, but also a vector of hope for those who have not have access to water. The 26th UN Water Conference must mark it an absolute priority and irreversible commitment regarding the WASH, but specifically WASH on the context of migration. Thank you. We encourage the people who have this initiative to bring it at the table of negotiation during the process of our conference, and we are open to listen, to learn more, and also call upon to countries to adhere to this initiative. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Mohamed. Please stay here. Pedro, please come on the stage also. We are going to have a big round of applause to all these great guests. So I wanted also to thank all the people who are in the audience here. And personally, as a humanitarian actor, I feel reassured. So we believe that this conference is going to take care of the humanitarian sector. It's vital for the planet. It's also vital for the credibility of the sector. So thanks immensely for the member states. Thanks a lot, Tanya, for pushing that for many years. Thank a lot for Mohamed and Shaima, and of course, Pedro. Thank to frame that under the human right, because it's all, at the end of the day, a matter of human right. Thanks immensely.